The screen door slammed shut with a crack that echoed across the fields, startling the crows perched on the sagging power lines. Clara Hargrove, federal judge and lifelong resident of Willow Creek, froze mid-step in her kitchen, her coffee mug trembling in her hand. The nerve of it, someone was in her house. Not just knocking, not ringing the bell, but inside, their boots scuffing her hardwood floors. She set the mug down, her pulse quickening, and reached for the paring knife on the counter. This wasn't New York or Chicago. This was rural Tennessee, where folks locked their doors more out of habit than necessity. But Clara wasn't naive. She'd seen enough in her courtroom to know trouble didn't always knock. "Who's there?" she called, her voice sharp but steady, honed by years of commanding respect in a courtroom. No answer, just the creak of floorboards from the living room. She moved silently, her bare feet cool against the floor, the knife gripped tightly. As she rounded the corner, she saw her, a woman, mid-40s, blonde hair pulled into a tight bun, rifling through the papers on Clara's oak desk. The stranger wore a navy blazer and held a clipboard, her lips pursed like she owned the place. Clara's blood boiled. This was her sanctuary, her late father's farmhouse, every inch steeped in memory. "Excuse me," Clara said, stepping into the light, the knife still in her hand but lowered. "Mind telling me why you're in my house?" The woman spun around, her eyes wide for a split second before narrowing into slits. "I'm Karen Whitmore, HOA president," she snapped, brandishing the clipboard like a badge. "This is an official inspection. Your property's been flagged for violations, unkempt lawn, unregistered livestock, and that god-awful shed out back. I have every right to be here." Clara's jaw tightened. HOA? Willow Creek didn't have an HOA. This was a patchwork of family farms and single-story homes, where neighbors shared sweet tea, not bylaws. "You're trespassing," Clara said, her voice low, dangerous. "Get out. Now." Karen didn't budge. "You don't get to tell me what to do. This community's going to be cleaned up, starting with this eyesore. I've got authority from the county." She waved a piece of paper, but Clara's trained eye caught the lack of an official seal. It was a bluff, and a sloppy one. Clara stepped closer, her years on the bench teaching her to read liars like open books. "Last chance. Leave, or I call the sheriff." Karen smirked, unfazed. "Go ahead. I've got friends in high places. You'll regret crossing me." Clara's fingers tightened around the knife. She didn't need it. She had something sharper, the law. But as she stared at Karen, a memory flickered. A rumor from the diner, whispered over greasy hash browns, about a new developer sniffing around, buying up land, pressuring folks to sell. Was this woman part of it? Clara's mind raced. She wasn't just a judge. She was a daughter of this land, and no self-proclaimed president was going to bully her out of her home. She set the knife down, pulled out her phone, and dialed Sheriff Tate. "Jim, it's Clara. I've got an intruder claiming to be from some non-existent HOA. Get here fast." Karen's smirk faltered, just for a moment, but it was enough. Clara knew she'd struck a nerve. As she hung up, Karen shoved past her, muttering about legal recourse and knowing people. Clara followed her to the porch, watching as Karen stormed across the yard, her heels sinking into the soft earth. The air was thick with the scent of hay and tension. Clara's heart pounded, not from fear, but from a fire kindling inside her. This wasn't just about her house. Something bigger was at play, and she was going to find out what. Why did Karen think she could walk in like that? What gave her the gall to invent an HOA in a town like Willow Creek? Clara's mind churned with questions as she stood on her porch, the fading light casting long shadows across the fields. She'd spent her life upholding justice, but this felt personal. Too personal. By the time Sheriff Tate's cruiser rolled up, kicking up dust on the gravel drive, Clara had already pulled her legal pad from the desk and started jotting notes. Dates, times, Karen's exact words. Every detail mattered. She'd learned early in her career that evidence was the backbone of justice, and she wasn't about to let this woman slither away. Jim Tate, a burly man with a mustache that hadn't changed since the 90s, stepped out, his boots crunching the earth. "Clara, what's this about an intruder?" he asked, tipping his hat. She recounted the incident, her voice steady but laced with indignation. "Karen Whitmore, claiming she's HOA president. No badge, no warrant, just a clipboard and a forged document. She was in my house, Jim, going through my papers. Clara handed him the paper Karen had waved, now safely in a plastic sleeve. No county seal, no signature. It's fake. Jim's brow furrowed as he studied it. HOA? In Willow Creek. That's a new one. He scratched his jaw. Whitmore, huh? Name sounds familiar. Think she's tied to that new development group sniffing around town. Clara's suspicions clicked into place. The developers, she said, her voice low. They've been pressuring folks like Old Man Carter to sell. I heard it at the diner last week. She paused, her mind racing. Jim, I want to file charges. Trespassing, attempted fraud, whatever sticks. Jim nodded, but his eyes held a flicker of worry. I'll take her in for questioning. But Clara, be careful. These developer types don't play nice. They've got money, and money buys friends. Clara's lips pressed into a thin line. So do I. The law's my friend, and it doesn't bend for cash. She turned back to the house, her resolve hardening. This wasn't just about her anymore. If Karen was part of a scheme to strong-arm her neighbors, Clara would tear it apart, piece by piece. Back inside, she fired up her laptop and started digging. Public records, property deeds, county permits. Her years as a judge had taught her where to look. Willow Creek's land records showed a flurry of recent purchases, all tied to a shell company called Horizon Ventures. No names attached, but a quick cross-reference revealed a Karen Whitmore as a registered agent for a similar outfit in a neighboring county. Clara's pulse quickened. This wasn't a random busybody. Karen was a cog in a machine, and Clara was going to find the engine. She called her old law school friend, Marla, a private investigator with a knack for unearthing dirt. Marla, I need you to look into Horizon Ventures and a Karen Whitmore. Something's rotten in Willow Creek, and I'm not letting it spread. Marla's voice crackled through the phone, excited. Sounds like a party. Give me 48 hours, and I'll have a file thicker than a Bible. As Clara hung up, she glanced out the window. The fields stretched endlessly under the moonlight, her father's legacy etched into every furrow. She thought of her neighbors, families who'd tilled this land for generations, now facing pressure to sell. Karen's intrusion wasn't just a violation of her home. It was an attack on her community. Clara's fingers tapped the desk, her mind already building the case. What was Horizon Ventures hiding? Who was backing Karen's brazen move? And how deep did this scheme go? The next morning, Clara drove to the county courthouse, her black SUV bouncing along the rutted roads. She filed a formal complaint against Karen for trespassing and requested a restraining order. The clerk, a young woman named Ellie, hesitated. Judge Hargrove, you sure about this? Karen's been in here, talking big about revitalizing the town. Says she's got investors. Clara's eyes narrowed. Let her talk. Words don't outweigh evidence. She slid the complaint across the counter. File it. As she stepped outside, her phone buzzed. Marla, Clara, you're not going to believe this. Horizon Ventures is a front for a big city developer, and Karen's their bulldog. I've got names, dates, and a paper trail that'll make your judicial heart sing. Sending it now. Clara's grip tightened on the phone. The truth was coming into focus, but the fight was just beginning. What would Karen do when she realized she'd picked the wrong house to invade? And how far would Clara have to go to protect her home and her town? The sun was dipping low, painting the sky in streaks of orange and purple, when Clara heard the crunch of tires on her gravel drive. She stepped onto the porch, her heart steady but her senses sharp. Karen Whitmore was back, this time with a man in a slick suit and a sheriff's deputy trailing behind. Clara recognized the deputy, Tommy, Jim Tate's nephew, young and green. The man in the suit carried himself like he owned half the county, his polished shoes absurdly out of place on the dusty ground. Neighbors had started to gather, drawn by the spectacle, their murmurs buzzing like cicadas. Karen strode forward, her clipboard replaced by a smug grin. Judge Hargrove, she said, her voice dripping with mock respect. This is Mr. Dalton, Horizon Ventures attorney. We're here to discuss your noncompliance with our regulations. Clara's eyes flicked to the wooden signpost by her mailbox, where someone, likely Old Man Carter, had painted in bold yellow, "Truth will out." She suppressed a smile. There's no HOA here, Karen. And you're on my property again. I've got a restraining order pending. Care to test it? Dalton stepped forward, his voice smooth as oil. No need for hostility, Judge. Horizon Ventures is offering to buy your land at a generous price. You'd be wise to consider it before things escalate. Clara crossed her arms, her judicial calm masking the fire within. Escalate? You mean like breaking into my home? Or forging documents to intimidate my neighbors? She nodded toward Tommy, who shifted uncomfortably. Deputy, you've got my complaint on file. Why is she here? Tommy cleared his throat. Ma'am, I'm just here to keep the peace. Ms. Whitmore says she's got legal grounds. Legal grounds. Clara cut in, her voice slicing through the evening air. Show me the county ordinance that gives her the right to trespass. Or the deed that says Horizon Ventures owns a single blade of grass in Willow Creek. She turned to the growing crowd. Farmers, shopkeepers, families she'd known her whole life. You all know me. You know this land. Are we letting outsiders bully us out of our homes? A murmur rippled through the crowd, growing louder. Old Man Carter, leaning on his cane, shouted, Hell no. Others joined in, their voices a chorus of defiance. Karen's face reddened, but Dalton raised a hand, unfazed. Judge, you're making this personal, he said. It's just business. Progress. Willow Creek could use a little modernization. Progress. Clara snapped, stepping closer. You're preying on good people, scaring them into selling their heritage. I've seen your kind in my courtroom, vultures in suits. You picked the wrong town. Karen's eyes flashed. You think you're untouchable because you're a judge? I've got friends who'll bury you in paperwork. You'll wish you'd sold. Clara's gaze didn't waver. Threaten me again, Karen, and you'll be in cuffs before sunrise. She turned to Tommy. Deputy, escort them off my property. Now. Tommy hesitated, glancing at Dalton, but the crowd's growing restlessness pushed him to act. Let's go, folks, he said, motioning to Karen and Dalton. As they retreated to their car, Karen shot Clara a venomous look, muttering something about regret. Clara stood tall, the weight of her neighbor's eyes on her. She felt the pulse of the land beneath her feet, the same dirt her father had worked, the same dirt she'd sworn to protect. But as the taillights faded, a chill settled in her chest. This wasn't over. Karen and Dalton were backed by money and power, and they'd come for her again. What was their endgame? And how many others in Willow Creek were already in their crosshairs? That night, Clara pored over Marla's file, a damning trail of emails, bank transfers, and shell companies linking Horizon Ventures to a real estate mogul in Nashville. Karen wasn't just a lackey. She was a fixer, hired to strong-arm locals into submission. Clara's fingers trembled with anger as she read. This was bigger than her house, bigger than Willow Creek. It was a fight for the soul of rural America. What would it take to stop them? And was Clara ready to risk everything? Her career, her safety, to win? Clara barely slept, her mind churning with the weight of Marla's findings. By dawn, she was at the diner, sipping black coffee and spreading documents across the table. The place smelled of bacon and nostalgia, its checkered floor worn from decades of boots. Locals nodded at her, their faces tight with worry. Word had spread about the confrontation, and Willow Creek was buzzing with rumors about Horizon Ventures. Clara knew she had to act fast. Karen and Dalton weren't the type to back down. She called a town meeting at the community center, a low brick building where 4-H kids showed off their pigs every summer. By noon, the room was packed. Farmers in overalls, retirees clutching thermoses, young parents with kids tugging at their sleeves. Clara stood at the front, her voice steady as she laid out the truth. Horizon Ventures was targeting their land, using fake HOAs and intimidation to force sales. She held up Marla's file, detailing Karen's role and the Nashville mogul pulling the strings. They want our homes, our fields, our history, Clara said, her eyes sweeping the room. They think we're just country folks who'll roll over. Are we going to let them? The room erupted in shouts of no and hell no. Old Man Carter stood, his voice trembling but fierce. My granddaddy fought for this land. I ain't selling to no city slicker. Clara nodded, her heart swelling. Then we fight. Together. I filed charges against Karen Whitmore for trespassing and fraud. But we need more. If you've been harassed, pressured, or lied to, come forward. We're building a case. Hands shot up. Stories poured out. Fake notices, late-night calls, even threats to foreclose on paid-off farms. Clara took notes, her legal mind organizing the chaos into a strategy. By the meeting's end, she had a list of 20 families ready to testify. But doubt gnawed at her. Horizon Ventures had deep pockets, and Clara's judicial position, while powerful, made her a target. What if they came for her reputation? That afternoon, she drove to the sheriff's office, where Jim Tate was waiting with news. Karen's been released on bail, he said, his face grim. Her lawyer's claiming you're abusing your authority, Clara. Says you're targeting her because of some personal vendetta. Clara's stomach twisted. That's nonsense, Jim, and you know it. She broke into my house. I've got the evidence. I know, Jim said, rubbing his neck. But Dalton's filed a counter-complaint. Says you threatened Karen with a knife. Tommy's report doesn't mention a knife, but they're pushing hard. You sure you want to keep going? Clara's eyes blazed. They don't scare me. File my charges properly, Jim, or I'll take this to the state level. She stormed out, her mind racing. Karen and Dalton were playing dirty, trying to discredit her. But Clara had faced worse in her career, corrupt lawyers, lying witnesses, even death threats. She wasn't backing down. Back home, she found a letter slipped under her door. No stamp, no return address. Inside, a single sentence in typed font. Drop the charges, or we'll ruin you. Clara's breath caught. This wasn't just about land anymore. It was personal. She called Marlo again, her voice tight. Dig deeper. I want everything on Dalton and his boss. They're not just buying land, they're hiding something. Marla's voice was grim. Already on it. Found a whistleblower, ex-employee of Horizon. Says they're dodging taxes, maybe worse. I'll have more tomorrow. Clara hung up, her eyes drifting to the fields outside. The threat was real, but so was her resolve. She was a judge, sworn to uphold justice, but she was also a daughter of Willow Creek. This was her home, her people. What was Horizon hiding? And how far would Clara have to go to expose them? The next week was a blur of depositions, affidavits, and sleepless nights. Clara's dining room became a war room, strewn with legal pads, property records, and Marla's growing file on Horizon Ventures. The whistleblower, a nervous accountant named Greg, had spilled everything. Horizon was laundering money through fake land deals, using Willow Creek as a front to hide profits from a shady Nashville empire. Karen wasn't just a fixer. She was complicit, signing off on forged documents to pressure locals. Clara filed a federal complaint, leveraging her judicial authority to request an FBI investigation. The move was risky. Her colleagues on the bench might see it as overreach, but Clara didn't care. This wasn't just about her house anymore. It was about justice for her neighbors, for the land her father had loved. She met Greg in a diner 2 counties over, his hands shaking as he handed her a USB drive. This has everything, he whispered. Bank records, emails, even Karen's orders from Dalton. They'll kill me if they find out. They won't, Clara promised, her voice firm. You're under my protection now. She didn't know how she'd keep that promise, but she meant it. Greg's evidence was dynamite, and she wasn't letting it go to waste. Back in Willow Creek, Karen and Dalton doubled down. They held a community meeting at the town hall, promising jobs and progress if residents sold to Horizon. Clara crashed it, standing at the back with her arms crossed. When Karen spotted her, her voice faltered mid-sentence. Judge Hargrove, she said, forcing a smile. Care to share your thoughts? Clara stepped forward, her presence commanding the room. I think you're lying to these people. Horizon Ventures isn't building a future, they're stealing one. I've got evidence, bank records, forged documents. That'll put you and your boss in prison. The room went silent. Karen's face paled, but Dalton jumped in, his voice smooth. Baseless accusations, Judge. You're slandering a legitimate business. Then let's see you prove it in court, Clara shot back. I filed charges. The FBI's involved. You're done. The crowd erupted, some cheering, others shouting questions. Karen fled the stage, Dalton trailing her, their facade crumbling. The next day, Clara's phone rang off the hook. Reporters from Nashville, then national outlets, caught wind of the story, a federal judge taking on a corrupt developer in a small town. Clara kept her statements brief, focusing on the evidence. But the pressure was mounting. Anonymous calls came at midnight, warning her to back off. Her mailbox was stuffed with threatening letters. One night, someone slashed her tires. Clara's resolve wavered, but only for a moment. She thought of her father, his hands calloused from years of farming, and her neighbors, fighting to keep their homes. She wasn't alone. When the FBI raided Horizon's Nashville office, the dominoes fell fast. Karen was arrested for fraud and conspiracy, her smug grin gone as she was led away in cuffs. Dalton turned on his boss, cutting a deal to save himself. The mogul, a man named Victor Crane, was indicted on multiple charges. Clara watched it unfold on the news, her heart heavy but triumphant. She'd won, but at what cost? Her name was splashed across headlines, her judicial impartiality questioned. Would her career survive the scrutiny? And what about Willow Creek? Could it heal from the wounds Horizon had inflicted? The arrests made national news, but in Willow Creek, the victory felt bittersweet. Clara walked her fields at dawn, the air crisp with the promise of fall. The land was safe, for now, but the scars remained. Neighbors who'd been pressured by Horizon were shaken, their trust in the world bruised. Clara felt it too, a weight in her chest that no courtroom wind could lift. She'd exposed the truth, but truth didn't erase fear. She called another town meeting, this time at the church, its pews filled with familiar faces. "We stopped them," Clara said, her voice softer than before. "But this isn't over unless we stick together. They'll come back, maybe not Horizon, but others like them. We need to protect our home." The room was quiet, then Old Man Carter stood. "You saved us, Clara. My farm's still mine because of you." Others nodded, their eyes shining with gratitude. Clara swallowed hard, her throat tight. She hadn't done it alone. Greg's courage, Marla's digging, the town's defiance, it was all of them. She proposed a community land trust, a legal shield to keep developers at bay. The idea took root, and by week's end, families were signing on, pooling resources to protect their farms. Clara worked pro bono, drafting the paperwork, her judicial robe traded for jeans and a flannel shirt. It felt right, like coming home. But the personal toll lingered. The media frenzy had painted her as a hero, but whispers in legal circles questioned her ethics. Had she overstepped, using her position to settle a personal score? Clara faced a disciplinary review, her career hanging in the balance. She sat before the panel in Nashville, her hands steady as she defended her actions. "I upheld the law," she said. "Not for me, but for my community. If that's a crime, then I'm guilty." The panel cleared her, but the scrutiny left its mark. Clara returned to Willow Creek, unsure if she'd ever sit on the bench again. She didn't regret it. The land, the people, the fight, it was worth more than any gavel. Still, questions haunted her. Had she pushed too hard? Could she have protected her town without risking everything? Winter settled over Willow Creek, blanketing the fields in frost. Clara spent her days helping neighbors navigate the land trust, her evenings by the fire, reflecting on the past months. The threats had stopped, the reporters had moved on, but the town was different, stronger, closer. Families shared meals, planned co-ops, and rebuilt what Horizon had tried to tear apart. Clara found peace in small moments. Coffee with Old Man Carter, laughter with kids at the 4-H fair, the quiet of her porch at dusk. She'd lost something, her untarnished reputation, perhaps, but she'd gained more. Willow Creek wasn't just her home, it was her purpose. One morning, a letter arrived from Greg, the whistleblower. He'd moved to Oregon, starting fresh, and thanked Clara for giving him courage. "You showed me justice isn't just in courtrooms," he wrote. "It's in standing up." Clara tucked the letter into her father's old Bible, her eyes misty. She thought of Karen, now facing trial, and felt no anger, only pity. Karen had chosen greed over community, and that was her downfall. Clara's phone rang. It was Marla, her voice bright. "The land trust is making waves, Clara. Other towns are copying it. You started something big." Clara smiled, gazing at the fields. "We started it," she said. The fight had cost her, but it had saved so much more. What did justice mean, if not this, protecting what mattered, no matter the price? Spring came to Willow Creek, the fields bursting with green. Clara stood at the community center, now renamed the Hargrove Hall, in her honor. The land trust was thriving, a model for rural towns across Tennessee. Clara had returned to the bench, her reputation restored, but her heart stayed with her town. At the annual fair, she spoke to a crowd, her voice warm but firm. "We're more than our land," she said. "We're our stories, our fight, our love for each other. No one can take that." The crowd cheered, kids waving homemade signs, one reading "Truth Will Out" in bright yellow. Clara walked home that night, the stars bright above. She thought of her father, of Karen's intrusion, of the battle that had tested her. It wasn't just about stopping Horizon. It was about showing that justice belonged to everyone, not just those with power. Willow Creek was proof, a small town that stood tall. As she reached her porch, Clara paused, her hand on the door. This house, this land, this life, it was hers, and she'd fought for it. She'd fight again if she had to. For now, she was home. What did it mean to truly belong? For Clara, it meant this: a town united, a legacy built, a judge who'd never stop fighting for what was right.